Greetings, wise counselors of the Force, and welcome back to our archives. Recently, we did a video talking about how Rey using Force lightning didn't make any sense in either canon or Legends continuity in The Rise of Skywalker, and you all seem to really enjoy that video. Of course, the sequel trilogy has quite a few canonical fallacies and continuity errors which have been repeatedly pointed out by many in the fanbase for years at this point. To make it clear, we aren't here to keep harping on the sequels or to berate a dead point. Having said that, you all seem to have wanted more of that type of video, so we decided to take a critical look at The Rise of Skywalker, specifically though at the Final Order fleet and Darth Sidious's grand plan, and in the end, explain why it makes basically no sense. The film asked us to stretch our belief when thousands of Star Destroyers, each with their own planet-destroying super laser, rose from the ground of Exegol with the intent of besieging the galaxy. This narrative device, while creating a large spectacle, finds itself stretching its own concept to the point where you could pilot a starship through the plot holes. And because of this, we wanted to lay down some factual reasons, as well as our own opinions on why this plan of Sidious's was at best lackluster, and at worst, just completely irrational. Of course, before we begin with our analysis, we understand that there does exist a certain piece of the fanbase that enjoys the sequel trilogy. If you are one of those and you are watching today, please bear in mind that we don't intend to antagonize you or the things that you like. With that being said, we don't necessarily love The Rise of Skywalker over here, and we wanted to make this video after many requests. So, with that said, let us begin. First thing is first, where in the galaxy did all of these starships come from? We know for certain by way of sources such as the Star Wars Visual Encyclopedia and the Rise of Skywalker novelization, that there were approximately 1,080 Zyston-class Star Destroyers, which is an absolutely absurd amount given the time frame that they have set up. It is implied that the Sith Eternal Cult began construction of the fleet immediately after Palpatine's death in Return of the Jedi, about 32 years prior. Our issue with this doesn't lie with the size of the fleet, but rather how the Final Order smuggled all the supplies and people to Exegol. It isn't as though Exegol has its own Starforge. Those ships all had to be built, and without all of the Imperial factory planets, it would have to mean that the ships were either being built right under the nose of the New Republic and exported to Exegol for 32 years, all without them knowing, or supplies were being smuggled to Exegol and they were built on system, which is implied since the ships all rose from the crust of the planet, indicating that they had been built there prior. And it seems to indicate that the Final Order built this entire fleet and then basically buried it. Anyway, not only is it highly improbable that the New Republic doesn't pick up on this, as they clearly would have had their sights peeled for suspicious Imperial activity after the Battle of Jakku, where the Empire made its last stand, but it isn't like there was a couple of massive shipments of everything they would need before the Empire fell completely off, and I'll tell you exactly why. Exegol was populated with the Sith Eternal Cultists and the Final Order crew, officers as well as Sith troopers, so let's do some quick math. A single standard Star Destroyer on average crews around 29,585 people. With that said, the Zyston-class Star Destroyers, as seen in the Sith Eternal fleet, have been noted as being a measure larger than the typical Star Destroyer, not to mention each of them being equipped with their own super laser, which would require an extra team of technicians to maintain and operate. So let's round that number to an even 30,000 people. For the fleet alone, 1,080 ships times a full crew of 30,000 means that there would have to have been 32,400,000 people, with that being the number to only operate the fleet alone. That's not counting the Sith stormtroopers or the cultists. The reason I'm pointing this out is that Exegol is a desolate planet full of the dark side of the Force. We have seen many times in canon as well as legends what happens to planets infected with the dark side. Hardly anything producing life can grow or thrive in that environment, which makes it reasonably unlikely that the Final Order could produce some sort of food source for this populace to be entirely self-sufficient, and that's not including other regular means of necessity such as clothes, armament, energy cells, basic day-to-day living elements, and the list goes on and on. This all points to the fact that they would have had to have regular supplies running to and from Exegol for 32 years, all under the nose of the New Republic. Even if they could pull all of this off, who is financing all of this? The Emperor most likely lost all of his monetary resources after the collapse of the Empire. The Sith cultists had a great many of people staffing Exegol exegol, and unlikely to be smuggling enough profit to fund this kind of endeavor. It's not suggesting that that's entirely impossible, however, just that you have to look at the logistics far more closely. The lower the likelihood becomes, and the believability just falls apart. We could talk logistics all day though, but let's go ahead and move on to the plan. Let's go ahead and assume the plan worked, and one day, out of nowhere, thousands of Death Star powered Star Destroyers popped up out of the blackest of space. The plan we are told here is that Sidious was now attempting to take over the galaxy again by sheer military force, targeting each of their Resistance home planets like Starkiller Base had done in an effort to wipe them all out and take over the galaxy by force. But then what? Literally, hold every single planet at gunpoint? Maintain one of these larger super lasers in the orbit of every system in the galaxy indefinitely? Despite their power, we were shown that it took the help of Darth Sidious's Force Storm to stop the Resistance fleet from posing a threat to his own fleet. If the Final Order couldn't crush this comparably small fleet in a head-to-head battle, how did they ever hope to maintain control over an entire galaxy? The idea of every planet having a super laser pointed at it 24/7 like someone holding a knife to their throat in an effort to maintain total control over the galaxy not only seems excessive, but kind of underwhelming. We're talking about Darth Sidious here, the same man who spent his entire career using guile and perfect manipulation tactics to gain power. The culmination of the rule of two is Sidious as set by Bane. The Sith had been reformed into something more than warriors. This was the entire reason the Jedi and the Republic failed to stop them. Sidious succeeded because he had the hindsight and the failure of all of his predecessors to go by in making his plans. But all of this is jettisoned into space like a ship dumping its trash before going to light speed. Sidious forgoes all subtlety and dives straight into the old Sith ways of straightforward broad conquest, dismantling 1,000 years of learned and earned wisdom. Even after the Empire was established, Sidious continued to manipulate things to his favor. It begins to beg the question of, why didn't Sidious just do this in the first place rather than build the Death Star twice? My conclusion to this point is that we know why he didn't do this, because it's not in Sidious's character. Sidious would have known that doing something like this would spell destruction as it had done dozens of times before in the past. He corrupted the entire Republic, and his superweapon back then wasn't the ships or Order 66, but it was the population of the galaxy itself, as he twisted everyone's minds into hating and fearing the Jedi, and then hating and fearing each other. He rose to power through the most splendid application of propaganda and subterfuge. Sidious would have been much wiser this time around in theory. However, no Death Star fleet it is. And that's another thing. This is definitely a personal opinion, but we'll end the video off with it anyway. Planet-destroying weapons have become overrated. There are some people who thought the Death Star being rebuilt in Return of the Jedi already took the grandeur out of the idea. No matter what your thoughts are about this side of things, Starkiller Base definitely took the wind out of this entire idea altogether. It was the Death Star, but bigger, and then bigger. It could destroy multiple planets at once. Then of course we get the Final Order, which can apparently destroy thousands of planets at once. Every single ship equipped with a super laser is just too much. It didn't raise the stakes at all, and in fact it did the opposite. One of the biggest pitfalls in trying to go bigger on a galactic scale is that the more that you do, the more difficult it's going to be for us to connect with the stakes on that kind of scope and impact. And because of it, it just grows to be absurd and the impact is drastically lessened. But acolytes, that concludes our rant for today. My friends, I hope you enjoyed this type of video, and if you agree with our talking points, be sure to let us know down below and explain why. And again, if you disagree, that's completely fine too, just let us know why. Once again, my friends, thank you so much for joining us. May the Force be with you, and I hope that you have a great day.